That was really a great day. Now I look at it as a great day. It wasn't always that way. I can remember that day like yesterday, and it was not a great day when I got there. You know, um, I do qualify. And when I say I do qualify, I qualify to sit in this chair that I'm sitting in right now. I had put in a lot of work for my alcohol abuse throughout my life. I started drinking around the age of 13. And to me, I never really even wanted to quit. You know, I thought it was just a way of life. Here in Louisiana, we have a festival for everything, right? I'm part of LASCYPAA, which is the Louisiana State Conference of Young People of Alcoholics Anonymous. I am the co-chair, and we will be hosting it in Lafayette, Louisiana, 2024. Y'all are welcome to join us. You can pre-reg at lacypaul.org. But I'm truly grateful to be here with you guys. And in Louisiana, we have a festival for everything, right? And drinking was just a normal thing. Everybody I knew in my lifetime drank. We actually, I mean, Mardi Gras, everything is just about drinking and having fun. And growing up, that was thought that was like a rite of passage, you know? And when I first drank, I knew I was different because, and I didn't know it at that moment, but now when I look back, I knew I was different because when I put that first drink in my body, I couldn't stop drinking. My friends took, I remember stealing a gallon of vodka from the fishing camp, from my dad's fishing camp, right? Called up some friends, snuck out the window. We started drinking. Well, everybody else drank a couple glasses and they were tipsy, and I just kept drinking. By the end of the night, I thought it was cool. I'm gonna chug the bottle of vodka, right? Sloppy drunk, ended up in the bathroom. No, I don't even remember, you know. Parents finding me, getting in trouble, you know, but the trouble didn't even bother me because I found what I wanted, right? At that moment, I felt like I was in, I felt like I fit in, I felt like nothing could stop me. And I'll never forget that feeling. And I continued to try to chase that feeling. And I never could really fully get back to that first time, right? So I'd have to put more and more and more and more, and it never ended. I had a good childhood, a good life. I mean, I played professional soccer at the age of 18 to 20, almost 21. I got hurt for the Dallas Sidekicks. It was a really amazing experience. I got to travel, I got to do things I love, but at the same time, I always felt detached. I never felt like I fit in, even with the team. I stayed intoxicated. I stayed doing outside substances, things of that nature, and it always got me nowheres. And when I got hurt, I went downward spiral because then after that, I had a license to use or a drink, you know. And it was a crazy thing that went all the way to the age of 37 years old. But I'm gonna just go into when I went to rehab about 3 years ago, right? I went to rehab. I really wasn't willing. I was on parole. COVID was going on. I had caught two more felonies. I've been arrested 38 times in my lifetime. And my parole officer's making me go to rehab, you know, or I'm getting revoked. And I can remember going there and I'm like, well, this is the first time I'm like, I'm going to go in here and try to take the most out of it. But I'm really not willing to do everything that they tell me. I'm going to do just what I got to do to get by. And I met some guys while I was in there, and I started to work some steps, you know, and I went through steps 1, 2, 3, and 4 while I was in rehab. And my fourth step, I actually wrote some stuff down, but I left like those one or two things off. I can't tell them everything, you know. And I can remember getting out of rehab. They were like, "You want to go to sober? You need to go to sober living." And I'm like, "No, I got a house, I got a truck, I got a small business, which was I was just basically robbing people, you know." And I didn't follow all the suggestions, but I had got a sponsor, and I had met some guys that were bringing meetings and stuff to the rehab, and I got in this backyard, and they held me accountable, right? They every time I'd share, I'd always try to get that victim role that I did so well, and I can remember in the backyard they would cut me off right then and there and be like, "Look, dude, that ain't nothing." Like they would just cut me off, you know, and it was something that I kind of needed because I never had that in my life. But I still wasn't quite willing to do all the suggestions. And the my ex was pregnant for my son, which is now 2.5 years old. And whenever he was born, wasn't long after that, I went back out, right? I relapsed. And I've this time, uh, they say that AA really messes up your buzz. And now I really understand it, because I actually got to meet some people and I got to see some joy in some other people, but I was still miserable inside. And when I went back out, now I got an excuse to try to make everybody miserable around me. And my kid's mom got hell. I feel so bad for her, I put her through a lot, and a lot of threats. She was scared to leave, things of that nature. Because when I'm drinking and I'm using it, I'm miserable. I want everybody around me miserable, especially the people I love the most, right? And it's been like that all my life, especially like my mom. I always took everything out on them because I love them the most. So like they got to be miserable too, because I'm miserable, you know. And well, I went back out, and it was a short relapse. I say short; it wasn't years. It was only like 2-3 months, and she ended up leaving me in that. Took my son with her. I'm really miserable. I'm going into court, and I'll never forget this day I went into court. I'm trying to slide a paper that I completed a 28-day program and that I completed the IOP, but I never finished the OP, because I didn't started using, but I'm trying to manipulate the system. I've been drinking for days, and the judge is just not hearing it out. And they look at me and they say, "You're a habitual offender. We're trying to give you the max, which is 10 years." And I'm like, I'm not taking that, and they deferred me to trial, and I got out of there, and I picked up the phone, and like all my drinking buddies, nobody answered the phone, and I was just miserable. I was crying, and I picked up the phone and I started calling some of the people that I met in that backyard, right? And they all know I'm back drinking, and they answered the phone, right? And the crazy thing is they all did the same thing. They said, "Yeah," they heard me out, right? And then they said, "What are you gonna do?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Maybe I'll just run to Mexico, and I'm crying. And they're like, "Yeah, well, call me when you got a solution." And they all hung up the phone on me. Right. And that was like the real first time I was held accountable. And it still took me about 2 weeks before I went to rehab again. And when I went into rehab this time, I went in on a Thursday and my sobriety day was a Friday. And I can remember that Friday is whenever my men's group would come and bring a meeting, at this rehab. And so there's 10 guys over there that I was in this backyard with. Some of them I was in rehab with the last time that are doing the right thing, working these steps diligently, living by some principles. And I could see this joy in their life, and they were there to bring a meeting. And I'll tell you, this was the longest 10-foot walk I ever had to do in my life. It really was. But something happened in that walk. When I picked up this desire chip, which I picked up many of them, I sat down and it was the first time I ever read this chip. And it said, "To thy own self be true." And in that moment, I realized I've never been truthful to me or anybody else in my whole entire life. And that was the first moment that I ever really worked step one and realized that I was an alcoholic and that my life was completely unmanageable and that I needed somebody to tell me what to do because I really just did not know anymore. So I found a guy to sponsor me, and I got out. I went to sober. I followed all the suggestions. Stopped trying to work for myself. Every suggestion that my sponsor or the group of guys gave me, I got more freedom in my life. You know, worked these steps diligently, and I got really honest with me and my sponsor, and I put everything out on paper, right? And so like going through step one for me was in that treatment center at that moment, And when I got to steps 2 and 3, every time that I've been to them, I always was like, "Man, I know who Jesus is. I'm good. I went to church, And I'd go try to brief him down and not hear the guy out. And this time I just put it all aside and I really heard him out, right? And he simply showed me that if I could live by some principles that this program teaches, if I can be honest, considerate, open-minded, uh, forgiving, have unconditional love, willing, caring. If I can do these things in my life, then that is a power greater than me, right? And I can diligently see that in other people's lives work and have some joy and happiness, right? And that was as simple as that. I changed my prayer life to me getting on my knees every morning and saying, God, thank you for waking me up. God, thank you for keeping me sober. Please let your will be done and put me in a place to be a blessing to others. And that's been my prayer since the day I've been, well, about a month since I've been, so once I was about a month sober. And I haven't changed up much on it. Now I've added, because as I got sober and as I work these steps, um, we have to do a little bit more as the longer we get sober, right? And I've added some things. I do meditations, I do a lot of things, but I'm not here to tell anybody how to do it, their prayer life. As long as you can find a power that's not yourself, then I believe that anybody can recover from a hopeless state, because I have. um then I got to 6 and 7, and 6 and 7 was, my sponsor showed me those character defects right after our fifth step, and then he had me write the opposites of them, right? And he made me get, he asked me, and he didn't make me do anything, he suggested it. He said, why don't you look inside the mirror every day for 2 weeks and tell yourself the opposite, that you're the opposite of these character defects, right? Because if we're concentrating on the problem, then we're going to keep doing the problem. But if we concentrate on the opposites and on the solution, then maybe we'll do that opposite. And I did that, and I remember in those 2 weeks when I first looked in that mirror, I still looked at myself and I was like, God, I felt like I was still ugly, you know. And within those 2 weeks, something changed. I was seeing myself in a different light, and I saw more hope in me. And all the things that I was saying was opposite. I felt like I could really be that, and I kept doing it for another 2 weeks, right? And I still do it to this day. Whenever a character defect's pointed out to me, I find the opposite, and I say it in the mirror in the mornings, right? Um, then I got to steps 8 and 9, and I made this list, right? And my sponsor's like, man, so you really need to go out there and do these, right? And I was like, yeah, sure. But in my mind, when I left from my sponsor, I was like, that can wait a couple weeks, right? And this is where God came into play. I can remember my son Jacques was 6 months old, and I was changing his diaper. I was going to go eat some barbecue at a friend's house, so I made a call to my buddy John to see if he wanted to come, right? And he didn't answer, and I put the phone down. And the first time my son's ever rolled over, he rolls over and he hits my phone. And when he hit my phone, he called a number that was on there. And this I do tile work for a living in construction, and I did a job for him, and then I robbed him for all his tools. I didn't even have him on my fourth step and fifth step or nothing. And I'm like, oh God, I gotta hang up. So I hang up the phone. Well, then he calls back, the nerve of him. And I'm like, oh, I can't answer that. I got to do this in person. Oh, I ain't got the money. I've got all these reasons, and I declined the call. But whenever that when he calls back, the first thing I did was I thought about the program and I used the tool. I called my sponsor. I'm like, man, I'm coming up with all these reasons why I shouldn't do it. And he's like, well, when God calls, shouldn't you answer? And I'm like, all right. He's like, man, call him back and just be honest with him. Own up for your part. Make a payment plan, whatever it takes. And so I called this guy back, explained to him what happened, and I made my first amends on that phone. Uh, Told him I was willing to make a payment plan. I was going to be in New Iberia for court tomorrow, and I was going to start giving him like $20 a week, whatever it took. And this guy heard me out, and he says, man, it takes a real man to own up for his stuff. He's like, the guy I'm hearing right now is not the guy that I remember. And I don't want your money. The only thing I want to do is pray with you. And I was like, what? So I listened to him, and we prayed. And he asked me one more request. He said, tomorrow when you're in New Iberia, to call me when you go on lunch for court. And I'm going to take you out for lunch. So I called him. We went to lunch the next day, and he bought me lunch, and he prayed with me again. I went back in court. They dropped all those charges to misdemeanors, and I had 18 months misdemeanor probation. That's how big my God is today. And then I went on like a I went really made all my amends, no matter what they were. It gave me the confidence. Then I got to steps 10 and 11, and I was already doing that. I was doing my own awakening, and I was doing my when we retire and making my inventory every night. My sponsor had me doing, and then I got into sponsorship, and that's what keeps me sober today, is helping another alcoholic or addict, whatever it is. When they call, I'm normally going through the same thing, you know. So I'm got to give them some advice, but then I got to take it myself. So it keeps me in check. Um, Today I get to be a father, I get to be a brother, a son. Um, there's a friend. I have family in these rooms, right? I've never had that. I've always been the black sheep, and I finally fit in. So I know I've earned this place in this seat. And through this work, it brings me a joy and a freedom that I could never explain to anybody. You just got to try it, right? And you got to trust the process and really give into to somebody else's suggestions. For me, I had to call my sponsor on everything. I'm just gonna cut off right there, man.